Say that one more time.
Jeez.
I'm all over it, he says.
Coventry's finest. All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the Coventry School Building Committee to order at 6:36 PM. Roll call: Kristen Bagley, Kristen Janusis, Ann Dixon, Anna Dos Reis Kutu, Alita Hall,
Here.
Christine Kennedy. Here. James Pearson,
Here.
Kim Shockley,
Here.
Amy Angeloni.
Here.
Mario Carreno, Don Cowart.
Here.
Stephen Angel.
Here.
Russ Hill,
Hill.
Robert Savetti.
Here.
Daniel Perillo.
Here.
Harold Sands.
Here.
Hillary Lima. We just have a quorum. Emergency evacuation procedures, we can go out this door here and you can also go out the way that you came. Approval of the minutes of March 15th, 2023.
They were emailed out and I do in your folder and I also have hard copy if anybody needs this.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion. Do I have a second?
Sorry.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. Minutes are approved. Moving on to item 4, bond/finance update discussion. Ms.
May I?
Perillo, or I don't know if Mrs. Savetti. if you-
Yeah, I can start. As we get closer to the realization of this bond coming forward, I just wanted to kind of give everyone a perspective. You can just take one, pass it around. There are 2 sheets there. One sheet is the current indebtedness the town has. And the second sheet is upcoming projects that the town hopes to put together over the next 20 years. My concern, I've only been here a short time, my concern in speaking to Mr. Savetti is, I think that $80 million number is too high. I think it's gonna really handcuff the town into doing other projects based on what we have projected long-term, about $240 million in town projects, as well as the current indebtedness. So with that being said, again, I don't have the right number. I just think 80 is too much. Our bond capacity is about 130 million altogether. We already have commitments up until I think 2040. Bob can speak more in depth on that part of it, but in general, I just think that as we're having these discussions and we're trying to get to the final number as to what is the right project to build and what the right number is, I personally don't think 80 million is the right number. So I just wanted to bring that forth on behalf of the town's perspective. Again, I'm speaking for myself, looking at what we have on the books right now, what the future holds for us. The town itself is not going out to bond for anything over the next 3 years. I think it's going to be opera money, grant money, and capital money. That's what we're going to be spending. We don't have the capabilities to go out to bond for anything as of right now. So that's kind of what I wanted to say. Bob, if you want to pick up on a few highlights of what you have there.
Yeah, so again, on the front sheet, you just see, the position, and it's kind of a mix because we know where we stand through June of 23 this year for our bond obligations, our capital lease obligations. The bottom portion of that, it gives you the balances as of June 30, 2021, which were the last audited figures. Obviously, we haven't had the 22 audit completed yet, and we're still waiting on some actuarial evaluations in those items. But as the town manager just mentioned, when you look at the bonds outstanding, the bonds and the lease purchase agreements, we're at about 48 million. You have a debt capacity based on our current valuations, 130 million. So if we were to go with the full 80 million, you'd be pretty much at capacity. You wouldn't have the
The
ability. to
difference
bond
there is
additional
only
money.
about 81.8 million, right? Somewhere around there.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. And then you just look at the other obligations of the town and the school. I think compensated absences in the audit, I couldn't find a breakout of the two, but you have compensated absences. So that's the accumulated, vested benefits of employees as far as vacation and sick time. Approximately 4.1 million. OPEB obligations, 27 million, then the various pension liabilities, the net pension liabilities, Municipal pension plans at 14 million, police pension plan roughly 63 million, PSRP pension plan 16 million. And then through the state retirement system, you have a net of about 54 million there. So, you know, when you look at the total liabilities overall, the liabilities or the long-term obligations of the towns, approximately $231 million. So when if you were to look at the audited financial statements, the most recent available, the net position of the town's negative. And what we're looking at when you look at the debt service obligations or the requirements, if you were to bond 80 million, what that would do to your tax rate. I know there's a reimbursement. We're trying to maximize on the reimbursement of, 69%. But even having to deal with that 31% that the town would have to come up, it's a big hit to the bottom line. And that's where Dan's second page, the town manager's second page, you have various other projects or things that looking to get done. My meeting with the town manager, I just don't see how really at this point we're able to afford going to bond for any of those projects. We're still trying to figure out where we stand currently on the town side. So I just don't see the ability to do any projects, at least of significant magnitude at this point, and deal with the additional the debt requirements.
But to clarify, you're not saying don't do a school bond at all. You're just saying
No,
not for that amount.
Not for that amount, correct.
Well, I was gonna add, short of that, there's nothing. Is there a reason, like, there's no long-term plan for the town that includes the schools, right? That's 240 million, and none of that is the schools.
Correct.
So if this does not happen, does that change somehow, get addressed somehow?
All of that's not gonna happen, obviously. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
we don't have the capabilities to do that.
No, but I mean, just 20 years minus the ability to do it, like.
No,
does the
I think
town itself-
something has to happen for the schools. I truly think something has to happen. I just don't think 80 is the right number. I don't know what the right number is. I just don't think 80 is gonna put the town in a position to prosper going forward. I think it's really gonna handcuff the town if we go that high.
I do have trouble with the fact that we don't know the right number, only because of the fact that you've looked at all these numbers. There must be a number that you think is the number. You know what I'm saying? Like, it might not be the 100% number, but it seems like you guys must have a number in mind if you don't think 80 is the number. You know what I'm saying?
Can I ask a clarifying question as well? Is there any bond debt falling off in the next 5, 10, 20 years? No.
Well,
Small amount.
very small amount. I think the first portion that falls off is 2028 fiscal year. But again, a small amount. Some of this debt's out there till 2040,
Yeah.
the larger bond. So there's nothing significant right now. We did look at that and say, okay, hopefully something's gonna fall off in a year or so, and then we can replace it with it, but
Right.
nothing.
Because some of this debt, you look at things like pensions.
Right.
They're not going anywhere, pensions.
So what we're trying, right, but what we're trying to do is avoid kicking the can down the road, because that's how, and it's not just Coventry, it's most of the communities in the state of Rhode Island. They can get kicked down the road because we keep pushing off the real problem. And so you're trying to say, okay, what can we do to try to get a consistent budget, make sure we're meeting the actuary required contributions for the pension plans, and still taking on additional debt, because we realize we can't let the schools crumble. We can't let the roads continue to crumble. Roads in this town, from what I'm hearing, haven't been done in 7-8 years. And you have the most roads in the state, I think.
Another concern, obviously, is what we see what's going on in Johnston and Cranston. Johnston's 40 million over, Cranston is 17 million over. The last big project is getting cut down by $17 million. If that were to happen here, what kind of school are we going to have left if we have to cut that project that big? If something similar happened, so that's a concern as to what's going on right now with rates of materials and construction and interest rates. So,
For the people in the fields, have you seen any relief with supply chain and pricing, or is it still like super high and super tough to get materials?
Things had leveled out for a while, but then I'm actually taking bids right now for Newport. So I was told steel is now, it had leveled, and I was told steel is going to have an increase soon, and then similar, I think, mechanical equipment driven by steel. So for a while, things were okay, and I haven't really seen, I'm taking like, 4 packages, right? So over the next few months, I'll know more. But it was okay for a while and things started changing again a little.
And the reason why I ask is, and this is not my area of expertise, but there are some trends that sometimes you can kind of make predictions. We wouldn't be in a position where we'd be building anything for a little while, right? Phil, would be a year out by the time.
At least.
Right?
Yeah, but then the problem with that is we'd be a year out, we probably have what, we have 3% maybe for escalation. Right now, it's probably more like
Correct.
5 to 8 is probably more of a reality. So a year out, our number is even less money to do what we want to do with it.
Right.
But what's scary to me is now seeing the exact math of we're bonding for 80 and our available capacity is 81. So that's assuming that everything goes swimmingly with the project exactly how it is. So I think the important thing is here that we have everyone in the room here is committed to making a bond happen, a vote happen this fall. It's just now a matter of what is this project going to look like in a way that can accommodate the financial state of the town and other infrastructure investments the town has to make.
Can you also update the rest of the committee a little bit about just what happened with bond council and the vote that the town council took in terms of moving things along? Because I don't know if everybody is aware of where we're at.
Yeah, so at our last council meeting, we did vote on the 80 million for the bond act. We did put language in for the 40, I forget what the exact percentage is, the
49.
the 49 point whatever percent. So that way, if for whatever reason we didn't meet the 60 whatever percent of the 69.2, that the bond act still was in compliance with the project. So we left that as an opportunity. So it still gives us out, it's that percentage and up. That's what had passed at the meeting 2 weeks ago.
So now that goes to the General Assembly and should be passed during this session there and now.
Correct. However, the way it's been explained to me is if it passes as the 80, then all of that is encumbered. So that means if, say, this project is scaled back, it doesn't matter if we don't spend a full 80, that entire amount is encumbered. Am I correct?
The bond capacity is what matters. So the bond would pass at 80 million. If you use 8 cents or 80 million, that bond capacity remains as outstanding capacity
Yeah.
against which you can't borrow. So it essentially uses the entire bond capacity of the town. And you'd be in that wouldn't roll off. The unencumbered capacity wouldn't roll off for 7 years.
7 years? Okay. And it would have to be, it's encumbered for the schools, the way the bond is written.
Well, it's the town.
So we
But
have
the-
80 million encumbered. If we don't use it, if we make different decisions on the schools, it could pave a road.
No,
That's what I was asking. It's encumbered for the schools.
That
That's
particular,
80
how
million,
it's
yeah.
outlined, that bond act.
you've left yourself with no bonding flexibility.
I agree on a lot of things with the project. I think we've all been watching the same news, that these projects aren't getting finished. And for us, the one-off projects are just as important as, I know percentage-wise for reimbursement, the new school is important, but the things you want to do with the high school, the things we want to do at the elementary and middle school, they're just as important. So it's not like build the new school first, and if we can't do those things, that's okay. I mean, if anyone disagrees with me, I don't work for the schools, so just let me know
Well,
that.
I would say the well, the roof and the sprinklers are extremely time sensitive.
Well,
Those are not things you can wait 5 years to do.
and your reimbursement for the other things for the high school, I'm guessing falls into a window as well, right?
Yeah.
So there's
You
some-
can't do that project because we get reimbursed a certain percentage. It's just like the school bond, you know what I mean? Like have been approved to do a project, we can get incentives and our incentives will go up to get reimbursed more, but we can't do the project until I have money to spend our share.
Right. So, but that's what I'm saying is all of these have pretty firm timelines around them. And because I don't want the school to not get finished. I don't want to end up with an elementary school that's like falling apart at some point, or we realize we haven't finished all the classrooms, or there are just different issues with it. And I don't know if anyone else falls into that, but like I said, whenever I look at the newspaper, that's what you're seeing. Like, that's all you're seeing. My other concern though, and unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't want to do nothing right now because I don't see any of this getting done either. Like, I think hurry up and wait has become kind of the decision. You know, we're just not moving forward with anything because we can't agree on what to move forward with. And I see doing nothing as just as big of a problem as doing too much. So, you know, that's one thing I see as a problem, is that we never start moving forward. My other concern is that, you know, right now the state is pushing these projects so hard. They want people working on these schools. And I don't want to miss out because we didn't get started when the state says, oh, let's see what we can do to up this for towns that started this and aren't finishing it. Like, you know, I don't want to miss out on opportunities because we didn't take our opportunity again. You know, this is the second time that we've been like, we're gonna.
I would agree. And again, I want to reiterate that I don't think anyone in this room is saying do nothing.
Nope. I
And
don't.
to me, I would see this as an opportunity to rethink the entire scope. And now maybe there's more investment to be made at the middle school. Maybe now we go back to some of the things that were going to be done in the full middle school project. Now, maybe they get more love than just a new roof as it is now. And maybe Washington Oak gets more attention. I'm sorry, Western gets more attention. And maybe, I mean, the capital list that Don submitted is like the Dead Sea Scrolls long, because we haven't been able to plan or make strategic investments in infrastructure with the way that our budget system works. So again, just to reiterate, we're not finishing this process without having made an investment. We've all put in way too much time at this table, and we all know that these needs are not going to go away. So we need to make it work, and we need to figure out which projects we're going to do and what's going to be on the ballot in October.
I think I kind of agree
Mhm.
with maybe focusing back. I think, as I hear it again, I'm a simple person, right? I just think the schools are terrible and our kids deserve better schools. Right?
Mhm.
So if you can't afford everything, you can't afford it. I feel like in a lot of the discussions, we've been hung up on the equity. It's like, oh, you can't just do this and not the others. And we've been trying to spread little pockets of money and it
Yep.
doesn't go anywhere and you don't see it. So I think it kind of brings us back to maybe it is the middle school.
The schools everybody
Because in
goes to.
theory, every kid goes to the middle school, and the only way if we can't have 80 and do something like that, the only way to make it so that taxpayers aren't, again, giving millions of dollars and not really being able to see or understand where their money is, that's the place to do something. And if it's 40, I'm just saying 40 and picking a number and
Yep.
a half, that plus some of the other projects that have to happen, I think you could do something substantial.
Yeah.
And, you know, vision.
In the projects that Kim talked about, the ones in the high school, are the kind of projects that when we do them, people will notice and feel good about right away. You see a new gym, you're gonna be like, wow,
Mhm.
this town is really.
New science
investing.
labs.
Right, and so I think it's important to do those projects, because a roof, nobody's gonna see. And, you know, it's not sexy, right? It's a roof. And so we need to do some of those projects that, you know, get people excited, because then they feel like the town is moving in the right direction. So, you know, I agree with that. So maybe, if you don't mind, does it make sense to have Phil maybe update us on stage 2 and talk a little bit about what we can pivot to and not pivot to? And then the next item on the agenda has to do with design, location, and configuration. That kind of feels like the next place to go. Does that make sense, or? Is it more finance maybe, or?
I was just gonna ask, does anyone have any further comments on this one? It's a heavy pill to swallow, but what what we're on a path here too, as you can see with the second page there. I do want to talk about some of those projects on the second page of this handout. So the 145 million in sewer projects, I don't know if you guys know, but we just, we're at 90% completion of our wastewater facilities plan update. And this includes 5 planning areas. And one of those planning areas is going to include the high school, which I don't know if you got, if anyone here knows, but the wastewater system at the high school is failing. So, and that solution is going to be really costly because that system is so old. It dates back to the original construction of that building from the 70s, and we can't, there's no parts that are available to fix it. So we're going to have to do a temporary solution until we can start investing in sewer infrastructure around the high school to hook them up to the sewers. The roads piece, you heard the town manager say, we haven't done a significant investment in roads in about 7 years. We did a bond. We do have a plan to use some ARPA money to help get it started and then also help us seed a certain maintenance line item in the budget. So right now there's 0 budgeted for roads, or if there has been, it's been about $80,000, which is nothing in paving. So the plan is to use ARPA funds to help ramp us up over the next couple of years to fully funding that line item. So we have maintenance there, but to do significant reclamation of roads is something that communities traditionally bond for. So that's the piece there. Overall, the third-party survey we had done, it was like this AI robot that went around town and scanned all of our roads and all of our sidewalks, said we have about 121 million in repairs that needs to be made to our roads and sidewalks. You can see sidewalks there. Capital projects, the town's capital line has been zeroed out for the last decade. Up until last year, the council funded it for the first time. So there's a list of projects just like Don has mentioned. Our sanitation trucks, there was a 20-year bond taken out less than 10 years ago to buy a whole new fleet of, I think it's 9 trucks. All of them are failing at once to no shock of anyone. So that's another one, is we're on the precipice of not having enough trucks to pick up trash and recycling. And then the town's buildings haven't had a significant investment. And we're going out to RFP soon, I believe. Town manager can correct me if I'm wrong. For facilities plan for town buildings. I mean, this building across the street, police station, senior center. I mean, obviously those are fairly new. The old police station. We have properties. We've done we've gotten estimates on the value, assessed value of properties that aren't in use. We're exploring selling those. So that's just some color for these here on the back. So I think that's it there. If we want to move on, or unless anybody else has any other comments.
The actual bond act as it's been written and is proposed is an $80 million bond act. If this group decides and the council decides that it's going to be a lesser amount, then we need to amend that bond act because it's already there, it's being sponsored. So that would need to be amended, and there would need to be congruity between the stage 2 application and the bond act.
So we need to get,
The General Assembly is going to be looking for that.
You couldn't just not expend the full capacity.
As I explained before, once you bond for that 80 million, you cannot do another project in this town for at least 7 years. If your roof leaks, it doesn't matter.
Because you recovered the money.
That's correct.
so that's why it's
Like a line of credit.
time is of the essence, so we need to adjust this amount to whatever it's going to be and the scope very soon, because they only go into session until June, and now's the time when they're getting flooded with bills at every committee level. So we need to make sure it gets in front of the council to to revise the bond act and then get it back to our sponsors and ledge council so they can submit it and get it passed. And then very, very soon after that is when we start talking about ballot language this summer. So Thank you.
Is that gonna do anything with stage two?
Your own maintenance.
Sure, so I think you should immediately contact Marriott. Make them aware of this. I think this is what he may say. You ask for a 6-month extension. And you submit the stage 2 at the next deadline, which is September. So that they can make their recommendation to the council in December. Because right now, your stage 2. Out of the 100 million, 82 of it was for a new school. That only left you 8 million at the high school, 3 million at Western, 2 million at Washington, and 3 million at the middle school. If you want to do something different, which is absolutely fine, you will want a stage 2 to match that. And the council makes their presentation in May, which is why they asked for our supplemental information by Monday, which we're prepared to do. Unless that submission on Monday is like a request for an extension to submit in September. That means between now and September, you're developing the project, and we're quickly coming up with a stage 2 that matches that. That's separate from your bond vote. You can have your bond
I was gonna
vote.
say, it doesn't affect that timeline.
No, you can have your bond vote in October for whatever amount. They don't have to, one does not have to happen before the other. They just need to happen.
But we still need to figure out the amount we're gonna go with in the next 2 weeks. at
For,
least.
yeah, for your bond,
Bond Act.
for your bond act, yes.
Yeah.
Then you would tell me and say, Phil, it's 30 million, and make sure you have 10 million here, 10 million there, 10 million there. And working with Mario, letting him know what we're doing.
Mhm.
Then we take the stage 2 that we have and revise it to match this amount.
Okay, Christine, you had your hand up.
We asked for a 6 months extension. Are we automatically losing the extra $8 million?
I think we lose part of it because we're not doing $80 million.
We're gonna
Because we
that,
lose
you know,
the incentive,
Yeah.
right?
The extra 8.
Get allocated to someone else.
It'll just be 8 million, not 16 million.
Well,
Well, it'd be less than that because.
it's gonna be
your
like 4
application
million if
may
we
not
make
be
it
that much.
$80, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
The
we lose the double.
times two, yeah.
We do.
I think if I remember correctly, that all came to be because they were trying to find a way for us to bring 3 schools together. So they threw an additional 8 million in to kind of incentivize us and to help us come up with the funding necessary to do that.
That was the incentive on the newer, fewer concept.
Sure, and Mario also made it clear that there was a risk that if we went beyond this current stage 2 period we're in, if we pushed it up.
Yep.
Stage 2 approval to the
Yes.
fall, we'd probably lose the.
Lose it.
Yeah.
I believe, as an outsider who's watched this for many years now, I think you're making the right choice, right? You're getting your financial house in order after a period of chaos.
Mhm.
The public has witnessed all of this. You're still gonna have to ask them to approve a bond.
Yes.
So they want to be comfortable.
Mhm.
You want to be comfortable as you're getting things in order. The issue is, and I think you have a good way of tackling this, Coventry Public Schools will eventually need a big project.
Yes.
And the other big project, there was a pathway to do it in pieces, which was the middle school project. So I could easily see investing more at the middle school, which still touches all the kids in Coventry
Mhm.
and does put you on a path to doing a major project 10 years from now. But still manage the finances that you have. I think you want to let Mario know what's going on immediately. I think you have a great story, by the way, because of the financial wreck that you have come upon.
Mhm.
You need an extension.
Okay.
Lester.
I guess I just want to make sure that as we rethink the project. That, when we go back to, a few months ago where we were going through all the different options, right? And then we always got to that one list where it was like a little here, a little there, and it you know, none of us were happy with that list. I think if we rethink it, I still think we need to be putting at least the substantial amount into one spot to still make it a wow. Because if we really spread out and trickle to all these schools, I think the community is gonna be left disappointed.
I agree.
It's not gonna be that wow effect.
And I think the investments, the flashy investments at the high school and the middle school is the way to do it because, and those are community hubs because rec leagues happen in there, community events happen in there. So I think you're right. I think we can't try and do it all for every district, for every voter. We have to start there, the two buildings that everybody goes in all the time.
And then the other question I have is that some of those grants that we got, are those tied to that May finish date? Do we have to be done with some of those grant spending?
The only one that I have to try to expend is, and it doesn't have to be connected to this, but I was trying to find a way to parlay, is we got an arts grant.
Right.
And I was gonna use that towards the auditorium, because you can use it there.
Right.
It's not part of the equity initiative grant, it's a separate grant for like $120,000. And I did some research on replacing the chairs in the auditorium, because the bond itself was for lighting and audio. Russ and I had somebody come in and just walk the gym and give us a ballpark on the gym and the bleachers. And it came in a little bit lower than what we wrote. So I said to Mario, if it comes in lower, can I shift from one project to the other? And he said I could. So we could theoretically shift, let's say we come $500,000 under in the gym project. I could swap that over and then potentially we can do the chairs, the
Carpet.
lighting, and you know what I mean? Like we could really spruce it up. Because the lighting and the sound is gonna be a big impact to like the theater and to productions, but it's not gonna make the room any prettier.
No.
Chairs are gonna make that room look much better.
We owe a portion of that, right? That grant, right?
The equity initiative one, we
We
owe
owe.
a portion of that. But the arts grant, no.
Is all, okay.
I don't have to extend that before the end of the year, so I talked to a vendor to see if there was a way for me to kind of get into a situation where I can start.
But the one for the state that does the gym and all that, that has to be done by June of next year, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I worry about.
Correct.
We gotta figure out how to finagle that.
And the gym one is a big one because of the level of work. They have to rip out the bleachers, rip out the floor. It's one of the biggest
Like,
gyms in the state.
Can we get an idea of a timeline on how, I mean, is there a way? I mean, are we talking weeks? Is it
No.
months? Like
Months.
months?
We have time, it's months.
And that deadline is substantially complete. And the definition of substantially complete is determined by us here. So I have done projects where substantially complete is,
Put a down payment.
Everything.
it's not completely done. Right,
And-
so,
and-
so that, don't get stuck on the June date.
Well, that, and to me, it sounds like we need to get creative, like if we started it, say in the spring, maybe boys volleyball has to be at the middle school gym somehow, or something like that, yeah.
And so the other part of it is, there's different incentives built in, just like our bond project. And one of the incentives had to do with, if you all recall, with partnering with minority owned businesses. And the company that Russ and I had talked to, the gentleman said that they're not a minority owned business, but many of their vendors, 30% of the people they work with are. And I asked Mario if there was like a pass through, like, could I still get the 15% benefit? And he said yes. So I think there's a way to bring our portion down and get more bang for the buck. So that's one of those things that I just don't want to lose track of.
Yeah.
And I do think those are projects that community needs. to see.
Agreed. Okay.
To
Yeah.
get back to the bond for 1 second, since there really wasn't any plans to do any work to Black Rock or Hopkins or Tayo, is there work that needs to be done there if you're going to keep them open now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
So we have, at one point, we were tossing around projects. One of them was, what do we do to upgrade those schools? And I'm, fill in the blanks here. It was like $30 to $40 million could be invested in each one of those schools. It doesn't have to be that high, but it could be that high to make it, like new. That's why we went with the one project, because it was actually cheaper.
So I agree with Christine, to sell it to voters, it has to have a singular focus. It can't just be like, we're doing something for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's an HVAC system or like, I
Well,
mean,
but you do something, right? But yeah, it's not.
you
flat.
do something, but,
Yeah.
but the marketing is, the
Well,
anchor is, yeah.
Maybe we do something that's either portable or just 100% necessary for the health and wellness of the kids. That's where you go to the safe, warm, dry. And then in the schools that with this project, we're thinking of keeping, like, let's just say people start falling in love with this one elementary school idea or 3rd through 5th idea over time, then we're still keeping Washington Oak and Western. So if we're going to put any additional money outside of the middle and high, maybe we focus a little more there, where we're thinking long-term that those schools are staying.
Right, because you do have to think about how you spend your money. So if you nickel and dime the middle school, knowing that the middle school needs so much work, you're gonna be throwing good money after
Yeah.
that,
Yep.
right? Because at some point that school needs to be like really done. And throwing like small money at it to just make it look nice is just a temporary
Yep.
fix. So you have to really think about what you're investing where, because what's the lifespan of that place? The other thing I was going to say is that, one of the things that Phil had offered up originally was a 2-school consolidation with the potential of adding a 3rd in. So if we want to shift to a more middle school centric project, we can. Or if we want to try to still capitalize on the incentives, we can still close 2 schools. And then either build in the incentive to try to get the 3rd, they said, build in the capacity to add the 3rd school later on. Is that what you said, Phil?
Yes, that
That
was
was our
one of, that
original.
was one of the options.
But I
I would just say though, like, honestly, there's a real possibility that if you go and you kind of switch to that at some point, we still can't afford that, right? So we allocate that now where we're scaling down
That was the 60.
what we wanted
Yes.
as our school, and then, and you're still gonna spend 60 million, but you're not gonna get anything that you wanted. So, and it's just.
And now it's like your middle school, you're building Guams off of the new school and it feels disjointed and.
Yeah, so I just,
I just want to throw it out there because it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Seeing we're just throwing things out there. Is there a way, we've talked about how many more how much more capacity, for instance, Washington Oak has than it's currently utilizing. And I know we have to put some room aside for pre-K and that sort of thing, but is there a possibility of closing one of these schools
So.
and literally just moving kids to the 4 others and selling a building?
So we could, actually, I was thinking along the same lines.
Not for this project, but something.
But I also wondered if we could still do. Would we still get the newer and fewer if we close 1? And then, no, you have to.
not really, because you're not building. a
Not
new one.
consolidating.
We wouldn't have the newer, we'd just have, we'd only be halfway.
Well, it's really gonna take.
Scratch out.
Is it newer and or?
I guess Amy and I would have to look at the moment and see. what the price
Literally,
is.
I wouldn't even want to factor it into like this plan right now, but just as something to think about for having fewer schools that we have to work on. Like,
Not doing the consolidation plan, throw the 70% out the window anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not gonna get those
Right.
bonus points.
I think that's what we have to go back and look at.
Yeah, but I
right,
mean,
what's our bonus?
Reaching back to the number.
Right,
Yeah, and real crazy, right? That's a good reimbursement, like.
It is.
and all
it was
like-
what we were getting on the last
Yeah,
project.
yeah, it was good then, it's pretty good.
And that's totally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've always
yeah,
figured.
base and something
Yeah.
like-
Yeah.
sure, but now we have to land on the moon, right? Shot for the stars,
Yeah,
let's land on the moon.
And I think he said it went up a little bit, so we're at like 58.9.
So I just wanna bring us back now, knowing we have such a short timeline, so. How can we arrive at a new figure that's takes the consolidated school out, but maybe. Shifts some of the other dollars to the middle school that's in the project.
And.
And does
still-
what you need to the 3 that are
Still
staying.
invest in the 3 that are here to keep them. Functioning.
Well, I hate to say it, right, but it brings us back to where we ended last time, like. Somebody from the town side needs to say, here's the number that we're comfortable with, and then we kind of give Bill a number and say, this is what we need you to. Kind of give us a plan to, right, it still comes back to somebody has to say.
Here's your
the
budget.
Yeah,
Right.
financially that we could live with, and then the town has to say, okay, if they say we could live with 50, we only wanna do 40, I mean, we really get back to that circular process, someone has to give us a number to work with.
And I'm hearing a little bit of disconnect, so. So there's a need to focus on high visibility projects that the town will go, people will go, wow, this is great. But at the same time, that doesn't mean pouring all the money into just the middle school.
No.
Because we're keeping those 3 elementary schools open, which need considerable amount of work. This is plexiglass window. Sorry. Push, there's a bucket underneath. Yeah, the other schools need money too, so that's important. So I think
Agreed.
priority, probably the high visibility projects, but if we're keeping those other schools open, they're gonna need work.
Yeah, we just can't creep back up to toward that 80 number.
Sure,
Budget,
I'm not
we
saying
Yeah.
add $80 million worth of projects,
Yeah.
I'm just saying. We need to keep that in mind, we're not just talking about a middle school, only a middle school project, this has to be.
You're back to
There's
the
other
needs,
projects in those other elementary schools.
you're back to just straight needs.
Yep.
Not necessarily trying to make the cafeteria prettier or
Mhm.
painting everything, you're back to what do you need to survive for another.
In more schools.
Sure.
I understand the time visibility piece too, but I also, and I think that's important, but. I'm gonna go back to the piece about. We have so many needs in all of the schools. I don't know how you do what needs to be done, and maybe I'm just, because we don't have a number. But how do you do what needs to be done at the middle school? And in order to make it like. But sustainable over time, like that it's not gonna fall back apart again in 10 or 15 years. And still touch the things in all those other schools, like. Windows, like just like windows that are safe.
So-
In our elementary schools, like that, it's huge.
What I think we need to do is we need to revise the 20-year plan that Bill made for school projects of that scale. But we also need to coincide the capital list for the schools at the same time, because just because the interest on the bonds technically counts as your minimum maintenance requirement, you shouldn't just zero out that line item you should still be making investments in the schools with that money and then also capital funds. So, yeah, Phil.
One thing we're also gonna have to wrestle with. When you conducted that second facility condition assessment.
Yep.
And Hopkins Hill, I don't remember which school it was.
It was Hopkins,
Well, but Hopkins Hill was over the threshold.
right,
We should be prepared that RIDE could challenge us and say, we're not giving you any money for that school.
right.
We've just told you that it needs to be demolished.
Mhm.
Now, we can maybe work through that, but there's just gonna be little hurdles like that along the way that we
Yeah.
need to keep in mind when we talk about investing. I went back to something we did last time. And we had like almost $2 million at each one of those, Hopkins Hill and Tayo. And that's probably not enough to have a bigger impact for 10 years. But someone will say, why are you investing $5 million in Hopkins Hill? So.
The biggest thing is, so since taking council president in the fall, it's been drinking from a fire hose with all of the neglect and can kicks in this town. And I've told Steve this many times that I would have like these kind of panic attacks once a day because it's overwhelming to think about how much needs to be done in this town. And he used to say to me, when you see a full plate in front of you, do you get so overwhelmed with all the food that you just shove your face into it? He said, no, you take one bite at a time. We have to start somewhere. And I know there's so much need, but if we risk being paralyzed by how long the list is of things to do at the schools, that we then do nothing. So we have to start somewhere. We have to understand that we have to have a plan, and make a commitment to that plan. And now, and again, people disagree with me, but having a different way of passing a budget allows us to actually strategically plan for investments like this.
I don't
So,
disagree with you at all. I think you're right.
so that's my biggest piece is I know it's overwhelming to think about the laundry list or the even longer than a laundry list of things that have to be done at these schools that's been deferred and neglected, but we have to start somewhere, have to. And that's the domino effect for everything else. So anything that we do, someone's going to say, why didn't you invest or do this at X school or that? I mean, you guys know it from your experience. We have to start somewhere. And if we have a plan that says, here's what's the investments in schools are going to be over the next 20 years, whether it's capital or bond, we can point people and say, oh, that part of this school, that's going to be done in 2020, whatever. And now we know. And now it's not a burden on our minds of when will this ever get done? Because I think that's part of the overwhelm here is, well, if we don't do it with this bond, then we're never going to do anything like this again. And it's tough to do this all, So I think having the peace of mind of a strategy is important.
And I think you piggyback off this document, right? It says long-term commitments, right? They're not really commitments at this point, but I mean, the schools need beyond a list like that, right? That we're circulating when you're talking to
Yeah.
people about what you're not doing. They have to be somewhere.
Yep.
On the long-term plan as well, and then it helps.
Yeah.
With the message.
I agree, Leader. I think that if, being a community member for a long time, I would love to see a list that puts the school and the town on the same page,
Mhm.
instead of us always being separated.
Yep.
And the plan to include us all together.
Mhm.
Because I think that's probably, as a school person, worrying, like, okay, we're gonna walk away from this, and we have 7 schools that need a lot of work.
Mhm.
Like, and this list talks about everything the town needs, but it doesn't say anything about the schools.
Yep.
So I want us to be a team.
I would agree, and I would say, we talked about this at our leadership team meeting on Monday. The town side leadership and the school side leadership have been meeting monthly, and the last month we've met more than that for the budget, and we've been saying, we're very committed to being a team, and we're not interested in, pitting each other against each other publicly, and we want to figure this out because we need to. Enough is enough.
So just to throw a number out, just looking at what we had for the high school in Washington Oak and Western, it seems like about $25 million needs to go to other, like not the middle school. And I mean, is $65 million too high a number? Were you thinking lower? Because when you think you really want to touch the middle school a lot, how much is a lot? I mean, I don't deal with my life in millions of dollars. So, but just saying to do safe, warm and dry or a little bit in each of the elementary schools, I'm thinking that's 3 million in elementary school. And we already have 8 million that we wanted to commit to the high school. So like I said, just rounding up $25 million on not the middle school. What's the number we're thinking to really make an impact, both visibly, like you said, and like we're fixing things so those kids are breathing well and safe in those schools. Like 65 million kind of, yeah.
So we keep talking about them like they're not in the room. Dan and Bob, what can you supply us with, like a number? I mean, I know you don't want to play God here, but I do agree that we need the town to say, look, this is your do not pass go amount.
Again, I don't think it's set in stone, but I would feel comfortable 30 to 35.
Ooh. I don't think they've done anything for $35 million.
Yeah.
I think that's $35 million poorly spent. And that's worse than 80 million well spent, as far as I'm concerned.
We got to start somewhere.
Still need a roof and a well, so we gotta start somewhere.
Yeah,
We have a school with no clean drinking water. And to me, if we have a bond that does that, then that's a win. And I see that as money well spent to give a school.
I would rather
water.
give you 3 million in ACWA funds than bond for it to give clean drinking water to the kids at Western. Like if I'm bonding, I want to do something.
6 million APRA funds for a roof and middle school.
So I just think the number we're starting with is too low. And if is that as high as we can go? Because if it is, then yeah, we figure out how to use it. But,
Mhm.
it wasn't that long ago that as a council, we were saying 80.
Mhm. But
And I know we've looked at more numbers
I
now.
was gonna say.
I know that. I do want to bond and get 59% back and have actually said, hey, look, we made kids stay in Coventry. We helped increase our overall education system in that way. You know, kids are sticking around. We're getting that 16,000 a kid again. Like, if it's 35 million, we've kind of already spent that, I think.
Well, when Steve Mascheroni's talked about the bond system, he said that the 80 million was okay from a perspective of what he was looking at. He said that we'd still have capacity there in the bond. Is that still viable or is that not viable? Because that's his presentation said it was okay.
He doesn't look at anything else that's on
Yeah,
the sheet.
I think
He
it's
looks,
a lot more.
He
bonds.
was a little more narrow-minded than what Bob did.
Again, we're looking at all the debt obligations and just looking at the future. So you're right. In his presentation,
it's
you know,
all
you do
roses.
have different capacity. He said you could probably do another 15 on top of the 80.
Right.
But it's a matter, it comes down to two, what can you afford from a budget standpoint to pay the debt service? Can you
Right,
afford to pay
right,
the
right,
debt
right.
service of 80? And then add on top of that, you know, we're struggling right now trying, as you know, we're struggling right now to try to get a budget that everybody's comfortable with staying within the 4%, you know, cap. And now if you start adding the debt on top of that, you know, in the future years when that debt kicks in, you have no room for anything for your salary growth. There's nothing but the debt cap that you're gonna be able to.
But isn't that the whole point, is that the voters go out there and say, okay, we are going to say yes to this based off of the number that we give them. And then that the tax, the money starts coming in and is already baked into what they're paying in taxes. So if we said 80 million and the taxpayers say, oh, yeah, we're gonna go with this because it's only gonna cost us X. Isn't the money coming in? I mean, I just
Well,
want
you
to
gotta
make
add
sure.
it into the budget. So if you're talking your debt service is another 2.2 million a year,
Yeah,
you
but
know, right there, that's over a 4% increase.
Yeah, no, but hold on a second. But the voters are saying, yes, we're going to fund this. And then you tax them at that rate that they say yes to, that has nothing to do with what's being taxed. In other words, it's on top of.
We still have to meet, we still have to
we can't
comply
go
with the
above
state
4%
law.
though.
No, you
Unless we
can't,
get
you
second-
can't in a
we gotta
bond
get second.
situation.
We'd have
Am
to
I
get
wrong?
separate legislation approved.
They're not talking about bonding, they're talking about debt service. You have to address the debt service portion of this. Can we afford to carry the debt service?
Okay,
And the
so,
answer to
so.
that is
No, I think
be-
he is asking a different question than that. He's asking about the taxing and
Right,
No, we then have to budget for it. Just because they said yes, you still have to find a way to pay for it.
right, but they're saying, yes, tax me for that amount. So then it goes into the tax base. I may be wrong
With
in this,
everything,
but that,
with everything else.
Yeah.
The last go around, if you could, in a bond year, tax over the 4% to cover the debt for the bond. I think we asked that question.
You'd
last
have to
time.
get
I just-
special legislation
Yeah.
approved.
Correct.
There is ways to go above the 4% limit. Correct.
yeah, but if they're going out. This is what I heard last year, and trust me, this is my first go around in this area, but I thought it was, if you put, that's why they vote on the bond. That's why all the taxpayers vote on the bond. Because they know their tax base is gonna go up by the amount of the debt service that we're gonna need on an annualized basis. That's going straight after them without the budget being part of that. So then it's baked in. I may be wrong on that, but
So you're saying the taxpayers would know that we're gonna see a 7 to 8% increase in the year the bond payments kick in.
correct.
I've never seen that happen, but.
That's why they're scaling back projects in Cranston and Johnston. Because the voters are not gonna swallow a 5% tax increase to cover that.
Well, no, it's not the voters swallowing that, is they're saying, yes, we approve this bond for 80 million. Not understanding that the tax base is going up by that amount.
They never do. Voters in the history of Rhode Island approve every project on the face of the earth. Everybody wants to see a new school. Nobody wants to pay for it.
But that's why they vote on it.
Yeah.
But that.
But on top-
That's why they
But
vote on
don't-
it. They
don't
say,
know that they're voting on a tax increase.
oh,
they're voting
it's just
for a new
very
building.
clear from what we did last year. It was very clear that the tax base was gonna go up by X amount of
Rhode
dollars.
Islanders see bonds as like this mysterious money. I mean, it's like, oh yeah, wetland support, that looks great, or oh, this looks great. I mean, it's like imaginary money.
In fairness, I don't want you to feel like you're going crazy. That is exactly what we talked about last year. So I don't want you to feel like
Thank
you're
you.
losing your mind. You know, we talked about how as you bond, you know, the percentages will go on for what you've utilized, and with legislative approval, you can bond.
Above and beyond the
Above
4%.
Is there a success range or rate that you think this community will support? I mean, we're talking about all of this, but at some time, it has to go to the voters.
Right.
So is there a feeling for what goes to the voters is more palatable in terms of an amount? Like, what has been Coventry's success rate on school bond votes?
They always say yes.
I don't, I have
Well,
no
the
idea.
last few years, all the state bonds, Coventry said
The
yes.
state, but he's talking
State
about
budget,
the
but-
local ballot.
The last school level roofs.
It was Ruth and the Walking, I think. Right,
So that they.
What year was the track at the high school?
I think the roof and the track, I wasn't here, but I think those, Amy might know, those are, I think, at the same time.
Was that 2010 or 2014?
I'm sorry.
Was that 2014 that last?
I'm gonna say, I wanna say 2012. But it was a few years ago.
Did that get shot down? The first go around, and then the ball fields or the track got added in so that it would pass.
Oh, really?
Police,
Yeah.
student police bond failed until they added the senior center.
Right.
Yeah.
And how much was that? bond?
What, and what were, yeah, what
Let's
was it?
add a liquor store with this
How
one.
much-
But not at the high school.
No.
At the elementary school.
perfect.
In the auditorium. Bar in the auditorium.
I was gonna say 13, but.
Sorry.
it might be 8 or 9.
So then how long
Needed
did it
that.
go back? 10 years,
That would just-
at least 10 years ago?
Yeah.
So 10 years ago, the biggest bond that Coventry has seen was 12 million and maybe 13 million.
Yeah.
Well, the
that was
elementary
in the
school, I'm
80s, it was
guessing, was high.
1988, when they built the gyms on Black Rock, Tayo, all of them. We built gyms on all the schools.
How much was Washington Oak?
Oh, Washington, anyways, that was 220.
2002.
20 years ago.
Mhm.
This whole
Survived
conversation
those.
is so
Survived.
disheartening. I hear it and I hear that Coventry is never going to have a brand new school. We're gonna drive town to town. Everybody's gonna have brand new school buildings
Some of them have.
and
And we paid
multiple,
for them.
East Providence.
Everybody, it was very fun.
We voted.
I'm sorry though, but I just have to say, your school committee races are unopposed. Your town council races are unopposed. Your state legislators are unopposed.
yours?
What?
Ours, collective ours, right?
Yes.
I know, you're saying yours, so I was.
But my point is, nobody stepped up in the last 20 years to pick the fight and make a change. What, I mean, that's what we have to be part of the change.
But is there really we don't have enough money, right? We're gonna be those people who think you can't afford to buy a house.
But
so
there could
you
have-
spend the same amount.
but think about it,
on
take-
rent every month and you pay somebody else's mortgage and you never get your own.
Take
Like, that's gonna be
take the
us.
recent police station and senior center bond out of the equation. You had bond capacity then, you could have done incremental bonds starting 20 years ago.
But you know what the town council was like at that time, right? For 30 years, the schools have been fighting the town, for 30 years.
Yeah.
It has not changed. I'm sorry, 35 years since I've been here. It has not changed. I mean, thank God we don't have to sit in the auditorium anymore and go at each other. Thank God.
Mhm.
But it's just not, it's never been like I guess an atmosphere of good discussion. So I'm appreciative of the fact that we can all sit here
Mhm.
and have a discussion about it.
Yep.
But I just don't know if, I mean, I think it's 35 million, we can try. I
Mhm.
think, are we gonna wait another 10, 15 years before we do something again?
Mhm.
And where are we gonna be?
Yep.
Again, we have the opportunity to get money from the state to help us pay for this.
Mhm.
And we're gonna not take it, let somebody else take it. I
We,
don't know, it just, it feels really uncomfortable.
Yeah, just
to me as a taxpayer.
I understand that, but I can't help the mismanagement and the decisions that were made in the last 20 years. I'm trying to start something now.
For the last.
We have to start somewhere. We have to start fixing this mess.
Yeah, no, this was.
Just
I get it.
It's just.
I get it, but
For years.
I just hope that this is a group that isn't a zero-sum game and says, let's walk away from this at least doing something.
And I will,
I
know, right? At this point.
Yep,
you know, and unfortunately, the timing, the state's giving us all this money and every town that's starting this is like, damn, like, we can't finish what we started. And maybe we can kind of turn this around a little bit and say, okay, we're lucky that we haven't already started down the road of this project and find out that the parts and pieces are too expensive for what we bonded for. I'd rather find out, okay, maybe we can't do all the projects we want to do, but we can actually make an impact here or there. So I do definitely want to make sure that we're bonding for enough to have that sort of impact. Like I said, my kids are staying here. I see a lot more kids this year staying here for the 9th grade. I'd like to see that move forward so that I'm not continuing to pay Foster Gloucester High School to take our kids when we have a good school system. So, you know, we've got a good group of people teaching our kids. What can we do to make it a more hospitable environment? I think is what we're looking for.
I'd like to put the challenge to kind of back around some of the town to say, like, I know you're comfortable with 30 to 35 million. Like Kim, in my personal life, I don't deal in $1 million projects, but I've never done a substantial project in my own home that didn't make me a little uncomfortable. So if we can just hedge to that a little uncomfortable, because I think that 30 to 35, like if we're being too cautious, I think we're killing ourselves.
Again, I think it's a balancing act. If that's what it is, what is that right number where we're not? We're gonna get something substantial done with the schools. While we also have the capacity to do things on the town side and pay our current bills. Right now, our levy debt, I propose a 3.81% levy increase for the budget. We can't go much higher. So if we're gonna take on $2 million in debt service for the next 20, 25 years, that's gonna be an issue going forward. It's gonna tie our hands going forward. And again, is 30, 35 the exact right number? I don't know what the exact right number is. I think it's what your focus is, what your priorities are, how you can, again, get the biggest bang for your buck. If that's the middle school, that's the middle school. I mean, you guys have been here a lot longer than I have talking about all these different options. That's where I think. Could it go to 40? I mean, again, there's no right number. There's no right number. But when taxes are going to continue to go up year after year after year, this is going to be part of the equation along with everything else the town's trying to do to move forward.
so, I just want to talk about timing now because what we need to get to a firm place, or at least somewhat firm place on that amount, because the council needs to revise that bond act. I don't know that we can get firm on that number before we have to file an agenda for next Tuesday. So we'd have to either have a special meeting the first week in May, or wait till the 9th, but I don't know if we can wait till the 9th. So, I mean, Phil,
More important, the general assembly, it's the amendment, or you actually have it, the council has to pass it first,
The council has to authorize the amendment.
change.
so I guess the question would be, Phil, then if we can see, I don't know if you can pull together estimates in that ballpark we're talking about right now of what it would look like. So that way we can say, all right, we can revise or amend the bond act to that amount.
I mean, we have plenty of data, projects and estimates, we can put it together. And then either give you options or ranges and sort of a la carte, and that's how it'll end up being anyway.
Mhm. Okay,
So. Yeah, we can quickly put that together for you.
okay. All right. We can follow up with you after this via
Yeah,
email,
yeah.
and we can talk about timeline.
And don't forget, the high school projects are grant funded outside of this, except for our share.
Yeah.
So we're still gonna get those
Mhm.
projects, it's just not gonna be. And we're gonna pay our share, so we don't have to worry about like those getting lost in the shovel, because when you built the project, there was like
Yeah.
82 million for the school, but it's $100 million worth of work. I know some of that's not gonna happen, but those projects still will.
Yeah, like in here, I'm carrying, I'll just round off, 8 million for the high school, of which 5 million was grant funded, of which a portion of that 5 million you need to pay. So. Yeah, well,
Where does that funding come from? The portion we need to pay.
That's on the bond. That's on the bond.
All right, so I think given our discussion, I would say items 6, 7, and 8. Maybe we table unless there's specific updates you wanted to give Don on or Phil on any of these. All right,
it's got a little busier. The last 2 days will be busy.
so with that, we'll move on to public comments. We don't have public comment.
We have
virtually, no.
someone in the room.
We have someone, a member of the public. Do you have any public comment? No, going once, going twice. Three times.
Jamie, speak.
Public comments closed. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn at 7:42 PM.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Oh, I'm sorry, no discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. We are adjourned.